Introduction. When a nurse escapes to the mountains seeking peace, she stumbles upon a terrified child in a deadly blizzard. What starts as a rescue mission becomes a fight for survival against nature and ruthless pursuers. But no one imagined what would come next. Before we dive into this incredible story, please hit that like button if you enjoy tales of courage and survival, and let me know in the comments what you think happens next. Your support means everything to our storytelling community. The windshield wipers fought desperately against the heavy snow as Rachel Morrison gripped the steering wheel with white knuckles. At 34 years old, she had spent the last 12 years as an emergency room nurse at Denver General Hospital, saving lives and witnessing humanity at its most vulnerable. The endless stream of trauma, the sleepless nights, the weight of making split-second decisions that meant life or death. It had all finally caught up with her 3 weeks ago when she'd suffered a complete breakdown in the middle of her shift. Her supervisor, Dr. Martinez, had been understanding but firm. "Take the time you need, Rachel. But when you come back, I need the nurse who used to light up this place, not the ghost who's been walking these halls." So here she was, driving through the worst blizzard Colorado had seen in a decade, heading toward a remote cabin she'd rented for 2 weeks of complete isolation. No cell service, no internet, no constant stream of emergencies demanding her attention. Just her, some novel she'd been meaning to read for years, and the kind of profound silence that city dwellers never experienced. The Toyota Camry struggled against the increasingly treacherous mountain road, its headlights cutting through swirling white curtains that seemed determined to blind her completely. The GPS had lost signal over an hour ago, somewhere near the tiny mountain town of Pine Ridge, and now she was navigating purely on the handwritten directions the cabin owner had emailed her. "Turn left at the old mailbox shaped like a bear," she read aloud from the paper taped to her dashboard. "Then continue for 2 miles until you see the wooden sign for Whispering Pines Retreat." She squinted through the windshield, barely able to see 10 feet ahead. This was supposed to be a light snow advisory. The radio crackled with static before a voice broke through. "Emergency weather alert for the Colorado Rockies. All residents are advised to shelter in place immediately. This storm has intensified beyond all forecasts, with winds reaching 70 miles per hour and snow accumulation expected to exceed 4 feet by morning. Repeat, do not attempt travel in the affected areas." Rachel's stomach clenched. She'd passed the point of no return miles ago. The road behind her would be impassable by now, and turning around on these narrow mountain curves would be suicide. Her only option was to push forward and pray she could find the cabin before conditions got worse. The heating system fought valiantly against the dropping temperature, but her hands were still numb with cold and growing exhaustion. She'd been driving for 6 hours straight, the last 2 in increasingly dangerous conditions. Her neck ached from the tension of peering through the storm, and her shoulders were locked in a permanent hunch from gripping the wheel so tightly. That's when she saw something that made her heart nearly stop. Through the swirling snow, barely visible in the cone of her headlights, a small figure stumbled along the edge of the road. A child. It had to be a child based on the size, wearing what looked like inadequate clothing for these conditions. As Rachel watched in horror, the small form pitched forward and disappeared into a snowbank. "Jesus Christ!" Rachel slammed on the brakes, her car sliding sideways, before coming to a stop just yards from where she'd seen the figure fall. Without hesitation, she threw the car into park, grabbed her emergency medical kit from the back seat, and plunged into the storm. The wind hit her like a physical blow, instantly soaking through her jeans and sweater despite the heavy winter coat she'd thrown on. Snow filled her eyes and mouth as she struggled toward the spot where she'd seen the child fall. There, half buried in a drift beside the road, was a little girl who couldn't have been more than 6 or 7 years old. Auburn hair plastered to her pale face, lips already turning blue from hypothermia, wearing nothing but a thin pink jacket that was completely inadequate for these conditions. No hat, no gloves, sneakers instead of snow boots. Blood trickled from a cut above her left eyebrow, and her small body was shaking so violently that Rachel could see it even through the snow. Most terrifying were the child's eyes, wide with a terror that seemed to go far beyond fear of the cold. This was the look Rachel had seen too many times in the emergency room, the expression of someone who had witnessed horrors no child should ever see. "Sweetie, my name is Rachel, and I'm a nurse," she called over the howling wind, immediately beginning her assessment as she wrapped her own coat around the tiny frame. The child's pulse was rapid but strong, breathing shallow but steady, mild to moderate hypothermia, possible concussion from the head wound, but nothing immediately life-threatening if they could get warm quickly. "I'm going to help you, okay? Can you tell me your name?" Emma," the child managed through chattering teeth that clicked like castanets. Her voice was barely audible over the storm. They were chasing me. I ran and ran, but I got so cold and everything looks the same." Rachel's blood turned colder than the mountain air. In 12 years of emergency medicine, she'd treated countless children who were victims of abuse, neglect, and worse. She recognized the signs immediately. "Who was chasing you, honey? Can you tell me?" Emma's terrified eyes darted toward the dark forest that loomed on both sides of the road. "Bad men in black cars. They took me away from Mommy 3 days ago. I escaped when they stopped to fix something, but I don't know where I am." Her small voice broke into quiet sobs that mixed with the wind. "I want my Mommy. I want to go home." Every protective instinct Rachel possessed activated at once. She scooped Emma into her arms. The child weighed almost nothing, probably no more than 40 pounds, and ran back to her car as fast as the treacherous conditions would allow. She immediately cranked the heat to maximum and wrapped Emma in the emergency blanket from her medical kit, the reflective material crinkling as she tucked it around the small body. "Emma, I need you to listen to me very carefully," Rachel said, her voice taking on the calm, authoritative tone she used in the emergency room during critical situations. "I'm going to take care of you, and I promise I won't let anyone hurt you. But first, I need to make sure you're not seriously injured. Can you wiggle your fingers and toes for me?" As Emma complied, Rachel conducted a more thorough examination. Minor abrasions on the palms from falling, rope burns around both wrists that made her jaw clench with fury, but no signs of broken bones or internal injuries. The head wound was superficial. Scalp wounds always bled dramatically, but would need cleaning and monitoring for signs of concussion. "Where is your Mommy now?" Rachel asked gently as she cleaned the cut with antiseptic wipes. "Do you know how to reach her?" Emma's face crumpled and fresh tears rolled down her cheeks. "I don't know where she is. The bad men said. They said she was sleeping forever and wouldn't wake up. They said I was going to live with new people who would teach me to be very quiet and do what I was told." Rachel felt like she'd been punched in the gut. The implications were horrifying, but she forced herself to maintain professional composure. "Emma, I want you to know that you're safe with me now. We're going to get through this storm together, and then we're going to make sure you get back to people who love you. Can you tell me your last name?" "Parker, Emma Beth Parker. I'm 6 years old and my birthday is in 2 months." The child's voice carried a note of pride, despite her terror. "Mommy is Dr. Sarah Parker, and she works at the big children's hospital in Denver. She helps sick kids get better, and she says I'm going to be a doctor too when I grow up, so I can help people just like she does." Rachel's hands stilled on the bandage she was applying. Dr. Sarah Parker, that name was familiar, though she couldn't immediately place it. Denver had several children's hospitals, and she wouldn't necessarily know all the pediatricians by name, but something about it nagged at her memory. As they drove the remaining miles to the cabin, Rachel's mind raced through possibilities and protocols. No cell service meant she couldn't call police or child services immediately. The storm would likely trap them until morning at minimum, possibly longer. She had a potentially kidnapped child whose story suggested organized criminals, and absolutely no way to verify any of the information or call for help. The cabin appeared through the snow like a blessing from heaven. A sturdy log structure with smoke already rising from the chimney, indicating the caretaker had prepared it as promised. Generator running, fireplace ready, fully stocked with food and emergency supplies. Under normal circumstances, it would have been the perfect retreat. Now, it felt like a fortress. Rachel carried Emma inside, immediately stoking the fire and putting water on to boil for tea and soup. The child huddled in blankets on the couch, still shivering but gradually warming. Her color was improving, but the haunted look in her eyes remained. "Are you hungry, sweetheart? When did you last eat?" Rachel asked, opening cans of soup and checking the propane levels on the stove. "Yesterday morning, I think. The lady with yellow hair gave us food, but it tasted funny and made me sleepy. I didn't want to eat it, but she said I had to." Emma accepted a mug of warm tea gratefully, wrapping her small hands around it for warmth. There were other kids there too, but they wouldn't talk to me. They just stared at the walls like they were broken. Rachel's stomach clenched. The details Emma was providing painted a picture of a sophisticated operation. Organized trafficking, drugging victims, multiple children. This wasn't a random crime of opportunity. "Emma, this is very important," Rachel said, sitting beside her on the couch. "Can you tell me anything else about the place they kept you? What it looked like, what the people looked like, anything you remember?" Emma scrunched her face in concentration, clearly trying to be helpful despite her trauma. "It was a big white house with lots of rooms and cameras everywhere. It smelled like the hospital where Mommy works, all clean and medicine-y. There were computers with pictures of kids on the screens, and the scary man with the spider tattoo on his neck was always looking at them and talking on his phone." "Spider tattoo?" Rachel leaned forward intently. "Right here," Emma pointed to the side of her neck. "It was black and looked mean, like it was going to bite someone. He was the boss and everyone was afraid of him, even the other bad men." Rachel felt ice forming in her veins. Emma was describing what sounded like a trafficking hub, a processing center where children were photographed, catalogued, and distributed. The level of organization suggested serious money and resources behind it. "How did you escape, honey?" "We were driving somewhere new and one of their cars got a flat tire. The scary man was very angry and yelling at everyone. When they opened the door to get tools, I ran into the woods. I heard them chasing me and shouting, but I kept running until I couldn't hear them anymore." Emma's voice dropped to a whisper. "I was so scared, Rachel. I thought they would catch me and hurt me, like they hurt the boy who tried to run before." Rachel's throat tightened. "What happened to the boy, Emma?" "They brought him back all bloody, and then I never saw him again. The yellow-hair lady said he went to live on a farm, but I don't think that was true." Emma looked up at Rachel with eyes far too wise for a 6-year-old. "Bad people lie a lot, don't they?" "Yes, sweetie, they do." Rachel pulled Emma closer, feeling the child's fragile bones through the blankets. "But I'm not going to lie to you, ever. I promise." As Emma gradually succumbed to exhaustion by the fire, Rachel stood at the windows peering into the swirling snow. Every shadow could hide a threat. Every sound of wind through the trees could mask approaching vehicles or footsteps. She dealt with dangerous situations in the emergency room, aggressive patients, domestic violence cases, drug dealers trying to retrieve their overdosed associates. But this felt different, more calculated, more deadly. She tried her cell phone again, holding it at different angles near the windows. Nothing. The landline in the cabin had been disconnected for the winter season. They were completely cut off from the outside world, alone with whatever forces might be pursuing them. Rachel realized she had no idea what she was truly up against, or whether Emma's story contained details that would make them both targets. What she did know was that she'd made a promise to protect this child, and 12 years of saving lives in crisis situations had prepared her for making impossible decisions under pressure. But as she watched Emma sleep, small fist clutching the blanket like a lifeline, Rachel had the unsettling feeling that this storm was only the beginning of their troubles. Outside, the wind howled with increasing fury, and somewhere in that white wilderness, evil might be searching for them both. Until 02. Dawn brought no relief from the storm that continued to rage with apocalyptic intensity. Rachel had managed only scattered moments of sleep, alternating between monitoring Emma's condition and keeping watch at the windows. The child had thrashed through nightmares throughout the night, crying out for her mother between periods of exhausted unconsciousness. Each time, Rachel had gently soothed her back to sleep, but the fragments Emma whispered in her dreams painted an even darker picture of her captivity. "Please don't take my picture again. I won't tell anyone, I promise. Mommy, where are you?" As pale grey light filtered through the snow-covered windows, Rachel assessed their situation with growing concern. The storm showed no signs of abating. If anything, it seemed to be intensifying. Snow had drifted nearly to the bottom of the windows, and the wind continued its relentless assault on the cabin. The generator was running efficiently, but fuel wouldn't last indefinitely if they were trapped for days. Emma woke slowly, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings before the terrible memories came flooding back. Her small face crumpled with the weight of reality, but she didn't cry. A heartbreaking display of premature emotional control that no 6-year-old should possess. "Good morning, sweetheart," Rachel said gently, bringing over a plate of scrambled eggs and toast she'd prepared on the propane stove. "How are you feeling? Does your head still hurt?" Emma touched the bandage Rachel had applied the night before. "It's better. My tummy hurts more now. I think because I'm really hungry." She paused, studying Rachel's face with remarkable perception. "You look tired. Did you sleep at all?" Rachel was struck by the child's concern for her well-being, despite her own trauma. "I dozed a little. I wanted to make sure you were okay." She sat beside Emma on the couch, noting that the child's color was much better and her temperature seemed normal. "Emma, I need to ask you some more questions about what happened to you. I know it's hard, but anything you can remember might help us figure out how to get you home safely." Emma nodded solemnly, understanding the gravity of their situation with unsettling maturity. "I'll try to remember everything. Can you tell me more about the place where they kept you? You mentioned it smelled like a hospital. Was it an actual medical facility?" Emma scrunched her face in concentration, clearly working hard to provide accurate details. "It looked like a hospital on the inside. White walls, bright lights, and there was a room with medical stuff like where Mommy works. But from outside, it just looked like a big house with a tall fence around it. The yellow-hair lady wore clothes like a nurse, but she wasn't nice like the nurses at Mommy's hospital." "This lady, can you describe her more? What did she do there?" "She gave us pills that made us sleepy and took our pictures for the computers. She had a name tag that said, Doctor Linda, but the scary Spider-Man called her something else when he thought we weren't listening. Something that started with K. Kathy or Karen, maybe?" Emma paused, then added quietly, "She hurt the kids who wouldn't do what she said." Rachel felt sick. The operation sounded increasingly sophisticated. Medical facilities, professional staff, systematic abuse. "Emma, did you ever hear any of them use names for each other, or talk about where they were taking you?" "The Spider-Man's phone rang a lot, and he would walk away to talk, but sometimes I could still hear. He talked about packages and delivery schedules and clients. Once he said something about having to move operations because someone was asking too many questions." Emma looked directly at Rachel. "I think they were talking about selling us to bad people, weren't they?" The matter-of-fact way Emma stated this horrific truth made Rachel's heart ache. "I think you might be right, honey, but you're safe now, and we're going to make sure you stay that way." As Emma ate, Rachel attempted to establish some form of communication with the outside world. She tried her cell phone from every angle in the cabin, even climbing partially out windows into the freezing storm. Nothing. The radio could pick up scattered emergency broadcasts, but they were mostly automated warnings about the continuing severe weather. She was returning from another futile attempt at the back window when Emma called out urgently, "Rachel, come quick!" Emma was standing at the front window, pressing her face against the glass. "I think I see lights moving out there, like car lights." Rachel's blood turned to ice. She joined Emma at the window, peering through the swirling snow. At first, she saw nothing but white chaos, but then she caught a glimpse of what Emma had spotted. Distant lights moving slowly up the mountain road, barely visible through the storm. "Are you sure that's what you saw?" Rachel asked, though her instincts were already screaming danger. "Yes, 2 cars with big lights, moving really slow, but coming this way." Emma's voice was tight with fear. "Do you think it's them?" Rachel's mind raced through possibilities. It could be legitimate search and rescue looking for them. It could be other stranded travelers seeking shelter. Or it could be the nightmare scenario she'd been dreading since finding Emma. "Emma, listen to me very carefully," Rachel said, forcing her voice to remain calm despite the panic clawing at her chest. "I need you to go to the basement and hide behind the boxes we saw yesterday. Take this flashlight and don't come out no matter what you hear, unless I specifically call your name 3 times in a row. Do you understand?" Emma's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded bravely. "What if something happens to you?" "Nothing is going to happen to me. But just in case, there's a small window in the basement that faces the back of the property. If you wait until everything is quiet and I don't come get you within an hour, you can break that window and follow the path through the woods. It goes downhill toward town." Rachel hugged Emma tightly. "But I promise you won't have to do that, because I'm going to protect you." "I don't want to leave you alone with the bad men," Emma whispered. "I won't be alone. I'm going to call for help." Rachel was lying, but she needed Emma to feel some measure of security. "Now go hide and remember, stay quiet no matter what." As Emma reluctantly headed for the basement stairs, Rachel quickly assessed her options. The cabin had solid log walls and good sight lines, but only one exit in the front and the small basement window in back. She had no weapons except kitchen knives and basic medical equipment. Her Toyota was parked prominently in front, advertising their presence to anyone approaching. She checked the locks on all windows and doors, knowing they wouldn't stop determined intruders, but might buy precious minutes. Then she positioned herself near the front window, where she could observe the approaching vehicles while staying hidden. The lights were definitely getting closer, moving with deliberate caution up the treacherous road. As they drew near enough for her to make out details, Rachel's worst fears were confirmed. 2 black SUVs with tinted windows, exactly the type of vehicles professional criminals would use for operations like this. They parked about 50 yards from the cabin, engines running, headlights illuminating the front door like spotlights on a stage. For several minutes, nothing happened. Rachel could see figures moving inside the vehicles, but couldn't make out details through the storm and tinted glass. Then the passenger door of the lead SUV opened and a man stepped out. Even through the swirling snow, Rachel could see he was tall and lean, wearing expensive winter gear that looked more suited to a ski resort than a criminal operation. He moved with calm confidence toward the cabin, seemingly unbothered by the storm that had nearly killed her and Emma the night before. He knocked on the door, politely, almost conversationally. "Ms. Morrison?" His voice carried clearly despite the wind. "My name is Detective Mills, with the Colorado Bureau of Investigation. We're here about the missing child you reported." Rachel's heart hammered against her ribs. She hadn't reported anything to anyone. They had no way to communicate with the outside world. Either this man was lying about his identity, or somehow they'd been traced, despite the storm and isolation. "Ms. Morrison, we know you're in there," Mills continued in the same calm, professional tone. "We've been tracking the child you found, and we need to speak with you immediately. She's in great danger, and we're here to help." Rachel remained silent, every instinct screaming that this was wrong. Real law enforcement would have proper identification, backup protocols, and wouldn't be operating in these conditions without emergency equipment and communication with dispatch. "The child is Emma Parker," Mills said, and Rachel's blood went cold. Her mother was Dr. Sarah Parker, who died in a tragic car accident 4 days ago. Emma has been missing since then, and we believe she may have witnessed her mother's death. She's traumatized and potentially dangerous to herself. The pieces clicked together in Rachel's mind with horrible clarity. Dr. Sarah Parker. She remembered now where she'd heard that name. There had been brief news coverage of a local doctor's fatal car accident, another tragic story in a city full of them. But if Emma had been kidnapped 3 days ago from a playground, and her mother died 4 days ago, the timeline didn't match what Mills was claiming. "Miss Morrison, we're going to enter the cabin now," Mills announced. "For everyone's safety, please remain calm and cooperate with our investigation." Rachel heard car doors slamming and multiple sets of footsteps crunching through the snow toward the cabin. She quickly moved to the kitchen, grabbing the largest knife from the block on the counter. It wasn't much against multiple armed men, but it was something. The front door rattled as someone tested the lock, then began to shake more violently as they applied force to the deadbolt. Rachel's mind raced through her limited options. She could try to barricade the door, but that would only delay the inevitable. She could attempt to escape through the basement with Emma, but they'd freeze to death in the storm within minutes. Or she could face whatever was coming and hope to buy Emma enough time to get away. The door frame began to splinter under repeated impacts. "Emma," Rachel whispered toward the basement stairs, "remember what I told you about the window. Wait for everything to go quiet, then run." The front door exploded inward with a tremendous crash, snow swirling into the cabin as 3 men stepped through the shattered frame, like angels of death emerging from the storm. Braizuna, 3, the 3 men who entered through the destroyed doorway, moved with the calculated precision of professionals, spreading out to cover different angles of the cabin while maintaining clear fields of fire. Rachel's years in emergency medicine had exposed her to law enforcement officers of all types, and these men had the bearing and equipment of serious operators, but something felt fundamentally wrong about the entire situation. The leader, who had identified himself as Detective Mills, was exactly as she'd glimpsed through the storm. Tall and lean, with prematurely grey hair and pale blue eyes that missed nothing. He wore high-end winter tactical gear and moved with the fluid confidence of someone accustomed to controlling dangerous situations. Most unsettling was his demeanor, calm and professional, like a surgeon preparing for a routine operation. "Ms. Morrison," Mills said, showing a badge and identification that looked legitimate at first glance. "I apologize for the dramatic entry, but this is a federal investigation involving kidnapping and murder, and we couldn't take chances on you being coerced or threatened by the perpetrators." Rachel gripped the kitchen knife tighter, though she knew it was practically useless against 3 armed men. "I haven't reported anything to anyone. There's no cell service, no landline. How did you even know I was here?" Mills smiled, but the expression didn't reach his cold eyes. "We've been tracking the missing child through various means: traffic cameras, credit card usage, cell tower pings before the storm knocked out communications. Your rental car was spotted on security footage at the Pine Ridge gas station yesterday evening, and the cabin owner provided your reservation information when we explained the situation." The explanation sounded plausible, but Rachel's instincts continued screaming warnings. Something about Mills's bearing, the way his companions positioned themselves, the timing of their arrival, it all felt choreographed rather than investigative. "Where is Emma Parker?" Mills continued, his tone remaining conversational despite the underlying steel. "We know she's here, Ms. Morrison. The child is a key witness to her mother's murder, and she's in grave danger from the people who killed Dr. Parker. We need to get her into protective custody immediately." "Her mother was murdered?" Rachel tried to keep her voice steady while processing this information. "I thought you said it was a car accident." "The accident was staged," Mills replied smoothly. "Dr. Sarah Parker had discovered something that made her a target, specifically evidence of a medical trafficking ring that was selling children to wealthy clients for illegal medical procedures. She was planning to expose the operation when she was eliminated." One of Mills' companions, a stocky man with military bearing, called from the bedroom doorway. "Living areas clear. Basement access is through the kitchen." Mills nodded and stepped closer to Rachel. "Miss Morrison, I understand your protective instincts regarding the child. In your position, I would be equally cautious. But Emma Parker is carrying information that could bring down an entire criminal network, information that makes her extremely valuable to very dangerous people. Every minute she remains unprotected increases the risk to both of you. Rachel's mind raced through the implications. If Mills was legitimate law enforcement, then cooperating was Emma's best chance at safety and justice for her mother. But if he was part of the criminal organization, then revealing Emma's location would be signing both their death warrants. I need to see more identification, Rachel said, backing toward the kitchen counter. And I want to call your supervising officer to verify your authority. Mill's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. Ms. Morrison, we're operating under emergency protocols due to the storm and the immediate threat to the child. Standard verification procedures aren't possible under these circumstances. Then we wait until they are possible, Rachel replied firmly. The third man, who had been silently covering the front entrance, spoke for the first time. Sir, we should expedite this. Weather service is reporting the storm intensifying, and our extraction window is closing. Mills studied Rachel with calculating eyes, and she had the disturbing sense that he was evaluating her as both a potential asset and a liability. Ms. Morrison, let me be completely honest with you. The people who killed Dr. Parker have extensive resources and professional capabilities. They've already demonstrated willingness to eliminate anyone who threatens their operation. If they locate this cabin before we can secure Emma, neither of you will survive the encounter. As if summoned by his words, a sound drifted up from the basement, the faint creak of old floorboards under small feet. Mills's head snapped toward the kitchen, and Rachel's heart sank as she realized Emma had been listening to the conversation. She's downstairs, Mills stated matter-of-factly. Thompson, Williams, check the basement. Be gentle but thorough. Wait! Rachel stepped forward, the knife shaking in her hands. Let me talk to her first. She's terrified, and strangers will only make it worse. Mills considered this for a moment. You have 2 minutes to convince her to cooperate voluntarily. After that, we extract her by whatever means necessary for her own protection. The two men thundered down the basement stairs, their heavy boots echoing through the cabin. Rachel could hear them moving boxes and furniture, systematically searching the cramped space. Within seconds, a child's terrified scream pierced the air. "Found her!" Thompson called. "She's wedged behind the water heater, fighting like a wildcat." "Please don't hurt her!" Rachel begged, tears streaming down her face. "She's just scared." "Let me go down," and "No need," Mills interrupted as his men hauled Emma up the stairs. The child was sobbing and struggling with surprising strength for someone so small, her face streaked with tears and dust from the basement. But when she saw Rachel, something shifted in her expression, a flash of intelligence and determination that reminded Rachel uncomfortably of the calculating look she'd seen in Mills's eyes. "Rachel!" Emma cried out, reaching toward her. "Tell them about what Mommy taught me. Tell them about the special place." Mills immediately tensed. What special place? Emma looked between Mills and Rachel with an expression far too mature for a 6-year-old. "Mommy said, if bad men ever came looking for her papers, I should tell them about the secret room in our house where she hid all the important stuff about the bad doctors." Rachel suddenly understood. Emma was buying them time, using the only leverage a child could possess in this situation, information that her captors desperately needed. Mills grabbed Emma by the shoulders, his professional composure cracking slightly. "What papers? What did your mother hide?" "Pictures and computer files and recordings," Emma said, her voice growing stronger as she played her desperate gambit. "She said some doctors were hurting kids and selling them to bad people who wanted to do experiments. She was going to give everything to the police, but then the bad men came." Mills released Emma and pulled out a satellite phone, turning away to make a call. Rachel caught fragments of his conversation. Potential evidence cache. Parker was more thorough than anticipated. Need immediate search authorization. While Mills was distracted, Rachel met Emma's eyes and saw a brief, almost imperceptible nod toward the back of the cabin. The child was not only buying time, she was positioning herself for something. "The papers are hidden in a special drawer in Mommy's desk at home," Emma continued loudly, clearly trying to mask any sound from their planned movement. "She showed me the secret code to open it, but only I know how it works." Mills ended his call and turned back with barely controlled urgency. "You're both coming with us immediately. Emma is going to show us exactly where these papers are located, and Ms. Morrison will ensure her cooperation." "And after we find the papers?" Rachel asked, though she already knew the answer from the cold calculation in Mills's expression. His silence confirmed her worst fears. "I need my coat," Emma said suddenly, "and my special backpack from the basement. Mummy said I should always keep it with me." Thompson started toward the basement stairs, but Emma shook her head. "It's hidden really good, only I can find it." Mills nodded impatiently. "Make it quick. We leave in 60 seconds. Udan." As Emma headed for the basement stairs, Rachel noticed the child slip something small and sharp into her pocket. A piece of broken glass from a picture frame that had been shattered during the forced entry. The gesture was so quick and subtle that the men completely missed it, but Rachel saw the determined set of Emma's small shoulders and realized this extraordinary child had been planning their escape from the moment she'd been discovered. "Rachel," Emma called from the basement, "can you help me reach the high shelf?" Mills gestured for Rachel to follow, clearly unwilling to let them out of sight. As they descended into the basement, Emma whispered so quietly that only Rachel could hear, "When I say now, push the big box against the stairs and run for the window." Rachel's heart pounded as she realized Emma had been observing and planning throughout their captivity, waiting for the right moment to act. This wasn't just a terrified child. This was Sarah Parker's daughter, inheriting her mother's intelligence and courage in the most dangerous possible circumstances. Above them, Mills was growing impatient. "Time's up. We're leaving now with or without the backpack." Emma looked up at Rachel one final time, her young face set with grim determination. "Remember, Rachel, Mommy always said that sometimes the smallest people have to be the bravest." The storm outside continued to rage with undiminished fury, but Rachel realized that the real tempest was just beginning. Whatever happened in the next few minutes would determine whether they escaped to fight another day or disappeared forever into the white wilderness that surrounded them. Emma's small hand tightened around the piece of broken glass in her pocket as Mills's heavy footsteps started down the basement stairs. The cabin suddenly felt like the smallest place in the world, and their chances of survival seemed to shrink with each passing second. "Now!" Emma shouted with startling ferocity. Rachel threw her entire weight against the heavy storage box, sending it crashing into Mills as he descended the basement stairs. The impact knocked him backward into Thompson, both men tumbling in a tangle of limbs and curses. Emma was already at the small basement window, using the broken glass to cut through the old rope that held it shut. "Move, move, move!" Rachel grabbed Emma and boosted her through the narrow opening just as Williams appeared at the top of the basement stairs, weapon drawn. The window was barely large enough for an adult, but adrenaline gave Rachel strength she didn't know she possessed. She squeezed through the opening and dropped into the snow outside, just as gunshots erupted behind them. The men were shooting at the window frame, wood splinters exploding around the opening they'd just escaped through. "This way!" Emma grabbed Rachel's hand with surprising strength and led her into the forest behind the cabin. Despite being only 6 years old, the child moved through the deep snow with remarkable determination, following what appeared to be an old hiking trail that was barely visible under the storm's accumulation. "How did you know about this path?" Rachel gasped, struggling to keep up while fighting through snow that reached Emma's waist. "I saw it from the window yesterday and memorized where it went," Emma replied matter-of-factly. "Mommy always taught me to notice escape routes wherever we went. She said smart people always have a backup plan." Behind them, Rachel could hear Mills shouting orders to his men. Flashlight beams swept through the trees, getting closer. The storm provided some concealment, but they were leaving an obvious trail in the deep snow. "There's another cabin about a mile down this trail," Emma continued, seemingly unaffected by the cold that was already making Rachel's muscles stiff. "I could see the smoke from its chimney yesterday. If we can get there, maybe they'll have a phone or a radio." Rachel marveled at Emma's composure and strategic thinking. Most adults would be panicking in this situation, but this extraordinary child was calmly executing an escape plan she'd apparently formulated during their brief time at the cabin. They pushed deeper into the forest, the trail becoming increasingly treacherous as it wound downhill through heavy timber. Rachel's medical training allowed her to monitor their physical condition even while fleeing. Emma was showing remarkable endurance, but hypothermia would become a factor soon if they couldn't find shelter. "Stop right there!" Mills's voice cut through the storm from somewhere behind them. A flashlight beam swept across the trees just yards from their position. Emma immediately pulled Rachel behind a massive fallen log, both of them pressing flat against the snow-covered ground. The child's breathing was controlled and quiet, while Rachel fought to suppress her own gasping from exertion and fear. "Thompson, you take the main trail. Williams, circle around to the east and cut them off at the creek crossing," Mills commanded with military precision. "They can't have gone far in these conditions, and the child won't last long in this cold." Rachel felt Emma tense beside her at the casual dismissal of her survival chances. The child turned to look at Rachel with eyes that burned with an intensity that was startling in someone so young. "He's wrong," Emma whispered fiercely. "I'm stronger than he thinks, and smarter too." They waited in frozen silence until the flashlight beams moved past their position, then continued down the trail with even greater urgency. Emma led them off the main path, following what appeared to be a game trail that paralleled the larger route but offered better concealment. "Emma, how do you know so much about survival and escape tactics?" Rachel asked, as they navigated around a cluster of boulders. "Mommy started teaching me after she found the bad papers at the hospital," Emma replied. "She said there were dangerous people who might try to hurt us, so I needed to know how to be safe. We practiced hiding and running and remembering important details. She said I was special because I could remember things better than most kids." Rachel was beginning to understand that Emma's exceptional capabilities weren't just natural intelligence. They were the result of deliberate training by a mother who had known she was in mortal danger. Dr. Sarah Parker had prepared her daughter for exactly this situation. "What kind of papers did your mummy find?" Rachel asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "Medical records showing that some doctors were doing bad things to kids who were supposed to be getting help," Emma said with the clinical precision of someone repeating information she'd memorized. "There were pictures and money records and lists of names of people who were buying and selling children. Mommy said it went all the way to the top of the hospital, and that's why we had to be so careful about who to trust." The implications hit Rachel like a physical blow. Emma wasn't just a witness to random criminal activity. She was carrying information about a high-level conspiracy that involved respected medical professionals and wealthy clients. The stakes were far higher than she'd imagined. They reached a clearing where Emma suddenly stopped, holding up a small hand for silence. Through the swirling snow, the outline of a cabin was visible about 200 yards ahead, warm light glowing from its windows. "Something's wrong," Emma whispered with uncanny perception. "That's not the same cabin I saw yesterday. The chimney is in a different place, and there are too many lights." Rachel squinted through the storm and realized Emma was right. This wasn't a simple mountain retreat. It was too large, too well lit, and positioned in a way that suggested it might be some kind of operational facility. "We need to get closer and see what's inside," Rachel said, though every instinct told her they should flee immediately. "No," Emma said firmly, "that's what they want us to do. Mills and his men aren't chasing us randomly. They're herding us towards something. This is a trap." Rachel stared at this remarkable child, who continued to demonstrate tactical awareness that would be impressive in an adult, let alone a 6-year-old, then what do you suggest we do? Emma pointed toward a ridge that rose above the suspicious cabin. We go up instead of down. High ground gives us better visibility and more options. And there's something else. I can smell generator exhaust and vehicle engines. There are a lot of people down there, not just mountain cabin owners. As they climbed toward higher ground, Rachel's respect for Emma's capabilities continued to grow. The child moved with purpose and confidence despite the deteriorating conditions, constantly scanning their surroundings and adjusting their route based on terrain and concealment opportunities. Emma, when this is over, you're going to make an incredible doctor like your mother, Rachel said, meaning every word. I'm not going to be a doctor, Emma replied with startling certainty. I'm going to catch bad people and make sure they can't hurt kids ever again. Mummy's work is going to be my work now. They reached a rocky outcrop that provided both shelter and an elevated view of the cabin below. What they saw confirmed Emma's suspicions. This was no innocent mountain retreat. Multiple black SUVs were parked around the building, and armed figures moved between the vehicles and the structure with obvious coordination. It's a staging area, Rachel realized. They've been planning this whole operation. Emma pulled out a small notebook and pencil from her jacket pocket, items Rachel hadn't even noticed her carrying. With remarkable precision, the child began sketching the layout below, including vehicle positions, personnel count, and building entrances. Mummy taught me to always document everything, Emma explained as she worked. She said details could save our lives someday. Rachel watched in amazement as Emma created a detailed, tactical assessment of their pursuer's operation. The child's drawing included information about sight lines, escape routes, and defensive positions that showed an understanding of strategic thinking far beyond her years. There, Emma pointed to a communication antenna on the cabin's roof. They have radio equipment. That's how they've been coordinating with Mills's team. Emma, I need you to understand something very important, Rachel said. The people down there aren't just criminals. They're part of something bigger and more dangerous than we can handle alone. We need to find real help, real law enforcement. Emma nodded gravely. I know. But first we need to survive long enough to tell someone what we've learned. And we need proof that people will believe. The child pulled a small digital camera from another pocket. Apparently she'd been far better prepared for this escape than Rachel had realized. I've been taking pictures of everything since we left the cabin, Emma said. Mills and his men, their vehicles, their weapons, this staging area. Mommy always said that pictures tell the truth when people won't listen to words. Rachel felt a surge of hope mixed with profound admiration for this extraordinary child. Emma hadn't just been surviving their ordeal. She'd been gathering evidence and building a case against their pursuers. But their position was becoming increasingly precarious. The storm was intensifying, and they could see flashlight beams moving up the mountain toward their location. Mills and his team had apparently realized their quarry hadn't taken the bait of the suspicious cabin. Time to move again, Emma said, pocketing her notebook and camera. There's one more place we can go, but it's going to be dangerous. Where? Emma pointed toward the darkest part of the forest, where no lights or human activity was visible. The old mineshaft Mommy and I explored last summer when we went camping near here. It's hidden and defensible, and it has multiple exits. If we can reach it, we can wait out the storm and plan our next move. Rachel looked at this remarkable child who continued to demonstrate capabilities that seemed impossible for someone her age. Then at the hostile forces closing in from multiple directions. Lead the way, she said. Emma smiled for the first time since their ordeal began, not with childish relief, but with the quiet confidence of someone who had just gained the upper hand in a deadly game. 05. The abandoned mine entrance was hidden behind a curtain of ice-covered pine branches, invisible to anyone who didn't know exactly where to look. Emma led Rachel to it, with the confidence of someone retracing familiar steps, despite the storm and darkness that would have disoriented most adults. Mommy and I found this place last July when we were hiking, Emma explained as she pulled aside the frozen branches. She said it was our secret adventure spot, but now I think she was showing me places where we could hide if we ever needed to. The mine tunnel extended deep into the mountain, supported by old timber that had weathered decades but still seemed structurally sound. Emma produced a small LED flashlight, another item Rachel hadn't seen her acquire, and illuminated a shaft that disappeared into darkness. It goes back about 200 feet, then splits into 3 different passages, Emma continued with the precise recall that had impressed Rachel throughout their ordeal. The middle passage leads to a natural cave system that has another exit on the far side of the ridge. Mommy and I explored the whole thing and drew maps. Rachel followed Emma into the mine, grateful to escape the storm's fury, but acutely aware that they were trapping themselves in a confined space. Emma, what if Mills and his men find this entrance? They won't, Emma said with complete certainty. It's not on any official maps, and the entrance is designed to look like natural rock formation. Plus, we'll know they're coming long before they find us. As they moved deeper into the tunnel, Emma's flashlight revealed something that made Rachel's heart skip. Evidence of recent human activity, sleeping bags, water bottles, and what appeared to be communication equipment were arranged in a small alcove about 50 feet from the entrance. Emma, did you and your mother leave these supplies here? Emma's expression grew troubled as she examined the items. No, this stuff wasn't here last summer. She moved closer to investigate, her natural curiosity overriding caution. Rachel, look at this. The communication equipment was sophisticated, military-grade radio gear that could penetrate the storm interference that had cut off their cell phones. But more alarming were the documents scattered around the makeshift camp. Rachel picked up a folder and felt her blood turn cold. The papers inside contained detailed photographs of the cabin where they'd been staying, aerial maps of the surrounding area, and what appeared to be surveillance reports dating back several days. They've been watching that cabin for almost a week, Rachel realized with growing horror. This whole thing was planned. They knew someone would eventually bring Emma there. Emma was examining other documents with the systematic thoroughness she'd displayed throughout their ordeal. Rachel, look at this list. These are names of people who've rented that cabin in the past 6 months. Rachel looked over Emma's shoulder and saw her own name highlighted in yellow marker. Below it were detailed personal information, her address, employment history, financial records, even her recent medical leave from the hospital. They didn't just find us by accident, Rachel said, the full scope of their situation becoming clear. They've been monitoring everyone who might potentially help you. The cabin was bait, and I walked right into their trap. Emma's face was grim with understanding beyond her years. It's worse than that, Rachel. Look at the other names on this list. Rachel scanned the document and felt sick. Every person who had rented the isolated cabin in recent months was marked with a red X, and the notation, "no longer viable." The implications were horrifying. They've been eliminating anyone who might accidentally discover their operation, Rachel whispered. All those people. Emma was studying a map covered with markings and annotations. But they made a mistake, Rachel. Look at this. The map showed not just the immediate area, but a network of locations throughout Colorado and neighboring states. Facilities marked with medical symbols, transportation routes, and what appeared to be client delivery points. It's their entire operation, Rachel breathed. This is everything your mother was trying to expose. Emma nodded, her small face set with determination. And now we have the proof she died trying to get. But first we have to survive long enough to give it to the right people. A sound from the tunnel entrance made them both freeze, voices echoing off the stone walls, getting closer. Tracks lead this direction, but they disappear at the tree line. Can't have gone far in this weather. The kid will be hypothermic by now. Boss wants them alive for questioning. Too much evidence unaccounted for. Emma immediately switched off her flashlight and grabbed Rachel's hand, leading her deeper into the mine, with sure steps, despite the complete darkness. They moved with careful silence, Emma apparently navigating from memory of her previous exploration. The voices at the entrance grew clearer as multiple men entered the tunnel, their heavy boots echoing ominously. Flashlight beams swept through the darkness, getting steadily closer to their position. Emma pulled Rachel into a side passage that branched off from the main tunnel. It was narrower and required them to crawl on hands and knees, but it led to a small natural chamber that opened into the cave system Emma had mentioned. "This connects to the other exit," Emma whispered so quietly that Rachel could barely hear her. "But there's something I didn't tell you about this place." "What?" "Last summer, when Mommy and I were exploring, we found evidence that someone else had been using these caves. Not recently, but there were old supplies and equipment hidden in the deep chambers. She said it looked like someone had been conducting research or experiments here years ago." Rachel's skin crawled at the implications. "Oh, what kind of research?" "Medical equipment, surgical tools, and rooms that looked like they were set up for keeping people locked up." Emma's voice carried a maturity that broke Rachel's heart. "Mommy said some bad people had been using this place to hurt children before we found it." The sound of men searching the main tunnel grew louder, their voices echoing off the stone walls with increasing frustration. "Tunnel splits 3 ways here. Check each passage systematically. They're in here somewhere. No other tracks leading away from the entrance." Emma led Rachel deeper into the cave system, following passages that seemed to branch and reconnect in a complex network. The child moved with confidence despite the absolute darkness, clearly drawing on detailed mental maps she'd created during her previous exploration. They emerged into a larger chamber, where Emma finally risked turning on her flashlight again, keeping the beam pointed downward and shielded with her fingers. What the light revealed made Rachel gasp in horror. The chamber was indeed set up like a primitive medical facility, old surgical tables, equipment that looked like it had been abandoned decades ago, and along the walls, cells that had clearly been used to confine people. Scratch marks on the stone walls told stories of desperation and suffering that Rachel didn't want to contemplate. "Emma, we can't stay here. This place is perfect," Emma finished firmly, "because the bad men who used it before are gone, and the people chasing us won't want to stay here any longer than necessary. It gives us time to plan." Emma was systematically photographing everything with her small camera, building an evidence file that would expose not just their current pursuers, but decades of criminal activity. "Besides," Emma continued with chilling pragmatism, "now we know this conspiracy goes back much farther than just what happened to Mommy. This has been going on for a very long time." Rachel realized that Emma was right. They had stumbled onto something far larger than a simple trafficking operation. The sophistication, the longevity, the integration with legitimate medical facilities. This was a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of Colorado's medical and political establishment. "Emma, even if we survive this and get the evidence to authorities, who can we trust? If this operation has been running for decades, they must have people everywhere." Emma looked up at Rachel with eyes that held wisdom far beyond her 6 years. "That's why Mommy was so careful about who she tried to contact. But there is someone. She told me about a FBI agent who specializes in this kind of case, someone she trusted completely." "Who?" Emma pulled out a small piece of paper that had been folded and hidden in her shoe. "Agent Sarah Chen with the FBI's Crimes Against Children unit. Mommy said if anything ever happened to her, I should find Agent Chen and give her the evidence." Indeed, the sound of the search team was getting closer again, their voices carrying through the connected passages of the cave system. "We need to reach the other exit," Emma said, shouldering her small backpack with renewed determination. "And then we need to find a way to contact Agent Chen before Mills and his people realize what we've discovered." Rachel looked at this extraordinary child who continued to demonstrate capabilities that seemed impossible, then at the evidence of decades of horror that surrounded them. "Emma, I want you to know that your mother would be incredibly proud of you. You're not just surviving this, you're going to end it." Emma's response was delivered with the quiet certainty of someone far older than her years. "That's exactly what I intend to do, Rachel. For Mommy, and for all the other kids who never got the chance to escape." The sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the cave system as Emma led them toward their final confrontation with the forces that had destroyed her family. But Rachel was beginning to believe that Mills and his people had made a fatal error in underestimating the daughter of Dr. Sarah Parker. Damn. 06. The cave system's second exit opened onto a ledge overlooking a valley that Emma hadn't mentioned, a completely different vista than the mountain terrain they'd been navigating. Through the continuing storm, Rachel could see lights in the distance that suggested a town or settlement, but getting there would require a treacherous descent down an almost vertical cliff face. "There's a path," Emma said, pointing to what looked like nothing more than shadows on the rock face. "Miners built it to bring equipment up from the valley. It's narrow and dangerous, but it's our only way out." Rachel looked at the precipitous route with growing terror. "Emma, that's not a path. It's barely a ledge, in this storm, with ice on the rocks. And Mommy and I practiced rock climbing at the gym every week," Emma replied with matter-of-fact confidence. She said physical skills were just as important as mental ones for staying safe. "I can do this, Rachel, and I can help you do it too." Before Rachel could protest further, the sound of voices from within the cave system announced that their pursuers had found the back exit. They had perhaps minutes before Mills and his team emerged onto the ledge. "There's no choice," Emma said, already starting down the treacherous path with sure movements despite her small size. "Trust me, Rachel. I won't let you fall." Rachel forced herself to follow, fighting vertigo and terror as she carefully placed each foot on the narrow, ice-covered ledge. Emma moved ahead of her with remarkable confidence, occasionally stopping to point out handholds or warn about loose rocks. "Don't look down," Emma advised. "Just focus on the next step and the next handhold. Mommy taught me that fear makes you freeze, but action makes you strong." Halfway down the cliff face, Rachel heard shouts from above. Mills and his team had reached the cave exit and spotted them on the path. "There they are! 200 feet down the cliff face!" The first gunshot rang out, the bullet striking rock just inches from Rachel's position and sending fragments flying. "They're shooting at us!" Rachel gasped. "Keep moving," Emma commanded with startling authority. "They can't hit us accurately from that angle, and we're almost to the bottom." More shots echoed off the cliff walls, but Emma was right. The extreme angle and storm conditions made accurate fire nearly impossible. Rachel focused on following Emma's lead, trusting the child's climbing expertise and navigational skills. They reached the valley floor just as a new sound cut through the storm. Helicopter rotors approaching from the direction of the distant town. "That's either very good news or very bad news," Rachel panted, exhausted from the climb and adrenaline. Emma was already moving toward the sound, her small figure disappearing into the swirling snow. "It's good news, Rachel. Look at the markings." Through the storm, Rachel could make out the approaching aircraft, a helicopter with FBI clearly marked on its fuselage. As it settled into a landing in the valley clearing, armed agents in tactical gear emerged, taking defensive positions around the aircraft. A woman in her 40s approached them, showing identification and speaking with calm authority, despite having to shout over the rotor noise. "Emma Parker, I'm Agent Sarah Chen. Your mother contacted me 3 weeks ago about evidence she'd discovered. Are you injured?" Emma's composed facade finally cracked, and she burst into tears, not from fear, but from relief at finally finding the person her mother had trusted. "Agent Chen! Mommy said you would help us. I have pictures and documents and everything Mommy wanted you to see." Agent Chen knelt to Emma's level, her expression gentle but focused. "You've been incredibly brave, Emma. Your mother's initial contact led us to start investigating, and when the storm cleared enough for aircraft, we tracked the GPS signal from the communication equipment Mills' team was using." "You mean you were already looking for us?" Rachel asked. "Dr. Parker had given us enough preliminary information to start building a case, but we needed the additional evidence she promised to provide. When she was killed and Emma disappeared, we knew the conspiracy had moved to eliminate witnesses. Agent Chen stood and gestured toward the helicopter. What you've both been through has given us exactly what we need to bring down the entire network. Emma pulled out her camera and notebook, handing them to Agent Chen with the seriousness of someone delivering vital state secrets. This shows everything, Agent Chen. The bad doctors, the places where they keep kids, the money trails, all of it. Mommy died trying to get this to you, but now you have it. Agent Chen reviewed Emma's photographs and notes with obvious amazement. Emma, this documentation is extraordinary. You've provided evidence of crimes spanning multiple states and going back decades. This is going to result in the largest trafficking prosecution in FBI history. The sound of additional aircraft approaching announced the arrival of backup teams. Within minutes, the valley was filled with federal agents, medical personnel, and the infrastructure of a major law enforcement operation. "What about Mills and his people?" Rachel asked. "Already in custody," Agent Chen replied with satisfaction. "We had teams positioned at all the exits from that cave system. They walked right into our trap." As they were helped aboard the helicopter, Emma turned to Rachel with an expression of gratitude and determination. "Rachel, thank you for keeping your promise to protect me. But this isn't over yet. There are still kids out there who need help and bad people who need to be stopped." Agent Chen overheard and smiled. "Emma, I have a feeling you're going to be an incredible asset to law enforcement when you grow up. Your mother would be very proud of what you've accomplished." "I'm not waiting until I grow up," Emma replied with the quiet certainty that had impressed Rachel throughout their ordeal. "Those people hurt my mommy and tried to hurt other kids. I want to help catch all of them right now." 6 months later, Rachel received a call from Agent Chen with an update that didn't surprise her at all. Emma Parker, now 7 years old and living with her grandmother in Denver, had become an unofficial consultant to the FBI's Crimes Against Children unit. Her exceptional memory, analytical abilities, and understanding of criminal behavior had already contributed to solving 3 additional trafficking cases. The network they'd exposed had resulted in 847 arrests across 12 states, the rescue of over 200 children, and the closure of 17 illegal medical facilities. Dr. Sarah Parker's evidence, combined with what Emma had gathered during their mountain ordeal, had brought down a conspiracy that had operated for over 30 years. But perhaps most remarkably, Emma had requested that a scholarship fund be established in her mother's name, not for medical students, but for training law enforcement officers who specialized in protecting children. She says she wants to make sure that no other kid ever has to go through what she did, Agent Chen explained to Rachel during their phone conversation. "And honestly, I think she's going to succeed." And Rachel smiled, thinking about the extraordinary child who had taught her that courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. Emma Parker was going to change the world, and Rachel had been privileged to witness the beginning of that transformation during one terrible, wonderful night in the Colorado mountains when a burned-out nurse and a remarkable little girl had found the strength to survive together. The storm had passed, but the light Emma Parker brought to the world would shine forever.